I'm not as fired up as I was just over a year ago when the Sacramento Kings defeated the Los Angeles Clippers in double overtime in Crypto.com Arena, but I will not understate how massive of a win this is for the Sacramento Kings in this Western Conference playoff race. On ESPN, national television, with the country watching, they all heard the Light the Beam chants as the Kings took over Crypto.com Arena, dominating the Clippers 123-107. And with this win, they jump all the way up to fifth in the West. Let's break it all down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I hope you tuned in to yesterday's Locked On Kings podcast, where I broke down the road to the playoffs for the Kings in this extremely tight Western Conference playoff race where a win or a loss on any given night can be the difference in 1, 2, maybe even 3 spots in the standings. On this night, the Kings defeat a Clippers team that has dominated them so far this season. A Clippers team that we have labeled as one of those dreaded matchups for Sacramento that they couldn't seem to figure out how to beat. A potential Clippers team that the Kings could be facing in the opening round of the playoffs, depending upon how these standings shake out. The Kings go on the road. They step up to the moment, recognize how massive this game is, recognize the significance of the standings and where they're at. And with this game, they jump up 2 spots from 7 to 5th. More importantly, they go from play-in tournament straight into the playoffs. Like I told you, this win cannot be understated. This is one of those wins that once we get to the end of the season, if the Kings do make the playoffs outright, punch their ticket to the postseason, avoid the play-in, I think this is the win that we're going to come back, we're going to point to, we're going to look at and go, that was the moment. That was the turning point. Now, of course, none of this matters if the Kings don't handle business tomorrow night against the Miami Heat. We'll, of course, talk about that later on in the podcast. But for the Kings to recognize, to step to the moment, to understand what we've all been talking about here on Locked On Kings, on various Kings talk shows, radio shows, social media, articles, whatever, for them to recognize that even though the Clippers aren't necessarily right ahead of them in the standings, even though the Clippers aren't like the Dallas Mavericks or the Phoenix Suns or the New Orleans Pelicans, those teams that Sacramento is a game within or within half a game of or half a game ahead of or a game ahead of, in that group that could end up in 5th or could end up in 9th, depending upon how things shake out. Even though the Clippers aren't in that group, they're still a team that presented a lot of challenges that Sacramento just has not been able to overcome. And in a lot of ways, to me, this win was less about what the Kings did against the Clippers, although they did great things, which we'll get into. It was more about the Kings recognizing their own issues in these kind of matchups, recognizing what they've done or done poorly this season, their shortcomings against teams like Los Angeles. There are times where they just have not been dialed, have not risen to the occasion, have not been ready for a matchup like this with significant implications. And now with zero wiggle room, right? The safety net for Sacramento is gone because of some of their bad losses they've had earlier this season. They step up to the plate on the road against a very game Clippers team. And look, I don't care that Paul George didn't play. I don't care that Paul George was out. Would the Clippers have won this game with Paul George playing and them being at full strength? Maybe, I don't know. But that is a major question mark and a talking point about the Los Angeles Clippers that has nothing to do with the Sacramento Kings. The Kings' responsibility is to beat the team that's placed in front of them. And they still faced an MVP candidate in Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Zubac, who has been playing really well against Domantas Sabonis so far this season. That Clippers team, even without Paul George, not to mention Russell freaking Westbrook coming off the bench, that Clippers team, even without Paul George, is a very, very difficult team for anybody to beat, whether you're at home or on the road. And especially with the significance of this game, because this game was also big for the Clippers too. They might not be wrestling with the Sacramento Kings in that play-in to playoff picture. They're wrestling with the top teams in the West to potentially secure a third, second, or even number one seed. They are in that mix. So these aren't games that the Clippers necessarily can afford to drop either. It's not like one of those games where they go, oh, ho-hum, back to the drawing board. We have a 10-game lead over everybody else in the Western Conference. This is just another loss for us. And Clippers fans, you might be claiming that. You might be in my comment section right now going, man, this win sure means a whole heck of a lot for the Kings. Doesn't really mean anything to the Clippers. The Clippers have already beaten the Kings twice this season, blah, 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 blah. You can say that. I don't believe you, because I know how much the Clippers have to prove. I know how much the Clippers have been fighting their own demons, trying to overcome their own injury issues. The Clippers are a championship or bust team. The Kings aren't necessarily in that category right now, but what they're trying to do at this point in the season is build the foundation to get there. They're trying to climb that ladder, move up to the next rung, and it starts with wins like tonight. It doesn't start with what happens once they get into the postseason. A massive, massive victory for the Sacramento Kings. A massive victory. There's so many different players that I could talk about, and you would think, oh, Matt, you got to start with De'Aaron Fox, right? You have to start with the night that Fox had. Pissed off De'Aaron Fox. Man, he's at another level. I'm not starting with him, but we're going to talk about him. Don't you worry. I'm starting with Harrison Barnes and Keegan Murray, because to me, those two guys set the freaking tone tonight for the Kings, right? They came out of the gate both aggressive, both in attack mode. Harrison Barnes tonight was as dialed in on both ends of the floor, but especially on the defensive end, as I've ever seen. This is Harrison Barnes that was a contributor to a championship team. This is Harrison Barnes who stepped up to the table as a veteran who has been in these races before, who knows what it takes to win big games like this and ultimately get to where the Sacramento Kings are trying to go. He came in and said, follow my lead. And you know who was right there with him? Was Keegan Murray. Now, there have been too many situations this season, and we've talked about it here on Locked On Kings, where both Harrison and Keegan were not able to have good nights at the same time, right? One was seeming to sacrifice for the other. Or when Keegan was going off, Harrison was quiet. Then Harrison had that resurgence in January, and Keegan struggled. To see both of them step up, and I'm not just talking about scoring-wise. Like, Keegan did not have that great of a night scoring. He only scored 11 points. But he had 8 rebounds, 1 steal, and 1 block. He had a just absolute perfection moment in the first quarter of this game where his responsibility out of the gate was guarding James Harden. James Harden, who absolutely torched Sacramento earlier this season. You would think, hey, maybe Kawhi Leonard should be the guy that Keegan is guarding. No, James cooked the Kings earlier. Make sure James doesn't establish himself early on. Keegan, that is your assignment. HB, you got Kawhi. Both of them held down the fort. But Keegan specifically blocks James Harden's shot. The Kings get the loose ball. They get out in transition, and Keegan Murray hits a corner three-pointer. That possession right there speaks to exactly who Keegan Murray can be at a star level for this Kings team. The guy that makes that big defensive play, and on the other end of the floor, hits one of those three-pointers that in that moment looks great. In the grand scheme of things, may not seem like a massive highlight play considering it was in the first quarter and not the fourth quarter, but those are winning basketball plays that you can't wait until the fourth quarter to start making. You start making those winning plays right out of the gate. That's what Keegan Murray was doing. And then you have Harrison Barnes, who 22 points, 8 of 12 shooting from the field, 4 of 7 from three-point range. That efficient offensive night from Harrison Barnes, I will take any time you can get it, and the Sacramento Kings should be winning basically every single time you get those kind of offensive numbers from Harrison. But again, defensively, I saw Harrison locked in and more consistent on that end of the floor than I saw at any point this season. That was the version of Harrison Barnes that we considered to be the best defender on the Sacramento Kings for years. Now, to be fair, that might also speak to how poor the Kings have been defensively over the last couple of decades, right? But Harrison has the capability, has the intangibles, the physicality, the size, the length. Harrison Barnes has the capability to be a physical and impactful wing defender. He has that possibility, and he's been that from time to time. But when he is like this, when he's that dialed in on defense and making a positive offensive impact, he is an absolute starter on a playoff Sacramento Kings team. And hopefully you can get performances like this from HB come playoff time. Yeah, we got to talk about De'Aaron Fox. Yeah, we got to talk about Domantas Sabonis. I also want to talk about a key part of Sacramento's defense that has been a massive struggle for them all season long that stepped up big tonight. That's all still coming here on Locked On Kings. Before we get to that, though, like I said on the beginning of tonight's episode, this Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. So here's the strategy behind this, right? Typically, we look for good bets. We don't necessarily want to put a lot of money down on heavy favorites because the payouts aren't going to be worth what you're risking, right? Well, in this case, you want to find those big bets, right? Find a heavy favorite. Find who the Detroit Pistons are playing, right? Put $5 down on the money line on whoever the Detroit Pistons are playing. It doesn't matter if that $5 bet only gets you a $1 win when it hits. That doesn't matter. The $150 in bonus bets, which allows you to keep playing, have fun on house money, that is what matters, and that is what you get with winning that first $5 bet. So go and check that out, FanDuel. There's so many ways to play, so many fun things to bet on, like, might I suggest, Malik Monk for Sixth Man of the Year. He had a Sixth Man of the Year performance tonight, and he is certainly in that running. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot right now. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. You know, when it comes to De'Aaron Fox tonight, I'm going to spend a lot of time here in just a second talking about how the officials pissed him and pissed the Kings off. But the Los Angeles Clippers should be pissed off at the officials because those officials pissed De'Aaron Fox off. When De'Aaron Fox is playing angry, good freaking luck. And what I'm talking about is De'Aaron, who had an unbelievable performance, MVP caliber performance from De'Aaron in a gotta-have-it game, 33 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds, 3 steals. But the big moment to me, it was a moment that I talked about heading into the fourth quarter. I said, at some point in this fourth quarter, the Kings are going to be put to the test, and they're going to have to prove how much they want it. Well, it was less the Kings, and it was more De'Aaron Fox. Plays great defense on James Harden. Does exactly what Mike Brown is telling him to do. Arms back, chest out, defend with your chest, don't reach, use your legs, stay in front of him, take the contact straight up. That's good defense. Well, James Harden, because he's James Harden apparently, gets the foul call. De'Aaron Fox, in frustration, lets out, I'm sure, an expletive, and swings his arm in frustration. Now, side note really quick. Did you watch the game on ESPN, or did you do what you were supposed to do as a Kings fan and watch the game with Katie Christensen and Kyle Draper on the broadcast? Because I'm sorry, the ESPN commentary team tonight was absolutely dreadful, and I'm talking specifically about Bob Myers. Bob Myers was horrendous in this game. I think he's still pissed off from standing inside the Golden One Center watching the Kings beat the Warriors in the playoffs with that fan with the cowbell right behind him. You know that famous video? Look it up if you haven't seen it. He's probably still pissed off about that, and his ears are still ringing because he didn't have a good thing to say about the Sacramento Kings tonight. But he had the audacity. The former general manager of the Golden State Warriors had the audacity to say that De'Aaron Fox flinging his arm in frustration towards nobody in particular. He was flinging it away from everybody near the baseline by the basket. Him flinging his arm in frustration is an automatic technical foul. You can't do that. You fling your arm, that's an automatic technical foul every time. Says the man who was the right hand of Draymond Green for years. Draymond Green, who flails and punches Yusuf Nurkic in the face. Draymond Green, who flails and stomps Domantas Sabonis in the chest. Draymond Green who flails and kicks someone in the groin. That guy, your guy, Bob Myers, that's the guy that you had employed forever. You gave him money. You gave him contracts, and I understand why you did. Draymond Green was a damn good piece of that championship dynasty. I'm not hating on you for that, but I'm hating on you for saying something as stupid and foolish as De'Aaron Fox got that technical foul and deserved that technical foul there because he expressed frustration by flailing his arm. Not at anybody in particular, not at the referee, just in anger, disgust at that foul call when he doesn't feel like he's getting that call on the other end of the floor. Sorry, side note over. Let's get back to talking about De'Aaron Fox. That moment happens. He's pissed off. He responds to that with big offensive moments, huge shots, and then he responds to that with some awesome defense, right? Some incredible defense that De'Aaron Fox played in that fourth quarter on James Harden specifically. So it was a crossroads moment for the Kings, right? The Clippers are starting to make their run. The fouls are starting to go in their favor. The crowd's starting to get into it, into Crypto.com arena, at least the couple thousand Clippers fans that didn't have their seats taken by the Sacramento Kings fans, which, shout out Kings fans, man. That Light the Beam chant was the loudest that I have heard on the road at any point ever, right? Kings fans took over Crypto.com arena. No surprise. Kings fans show up on big, meaningful games. I mean, Kings fans show up every single night, but they travel with the Kings because they recognize the significance of tonight's game for their Kings team, and they let it out with that Light the Beam chant at the end. But the Kings respond to that adversity. Officials aren't going their way. Clippers making a run. Stars starting to get more involved. They respond to that. They slam the door shut, and they win this game comfortably, 123-107. De'Aaron Fox, absolutely sensational performance from Fox. And then, of course, there's Domantas Sabonis, right? 17 points, 15 rebounds, 12 assists, 3 steals. Y'all, this game was on ESPN. It's a Sunday freaking night. I know you're not doing anything else. I know you're watching. All of y'all that say Sabonis isn't good, Sabonis sucks, he didn't deserve to be an all-star, he's not as good as Anthony Davis, he's not as good as this guy, he's nowhere near Nikola Jokic, yada, yada, yada. All of y'all, I know you were watching. I know you were. You can't deny 20 triple-doubles from Domantas Sabonis. Crucial moments, big numbers, big plays to help the Sacramento Kings secure a big win. Not empty calories, not empty stats that directly correlated to one of the biggest wins of the season for the Sacramento Kings. And on top of that, I've been saying all season, every single podcast, it feels like, this is how Domantas made history today. This is how Domantas made history today. Well, guess what he did today? He became the 6th player in NBA history to have 20 or more triple-doubles in a season. You want to know the guys that he's with? The 5 other names? Of course, you have Oscar Robertson. You have Russell Westbrook. You have Wilt Chamberlain. You have Nikola Jokic. And you have James Harden. Now, my only question is, how many of those guys were deliberately not chosen as all-stars in the seasons that they had 20 or more triple-doubles when they nearly reached that margin before the All-Star break itself? It's absurd. I will continue to harp on the All-Star snub. Now, personally, I didn't mind too much that Sabonis wasn't in Indiana and he was getting some rest and getting ready for the second half of the season. So it's not him actually playing in that meaningless, useless All-Star game that sucks and nobody cares about. It's about the recognition. It's about putting Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Davis or whoever else that they put ahead of a man who now joins only 5 other players in NBA history. And most of these players were winning freaking MVP awards when they were putting up these kind of numbers in a season. It's ridiculous. But I know y'all were watching. I know you were. You can't deny it. You can't. Now, you can hide, you can pretend, you can make excuses all you want, and yada, yada, yada. We have to wait and see what he does in the playoffs. You can keep regurgitating the same old crap. But meanwhile, Domantas Sabonis is going to keep going out and keep making history only the way that he can. I got to talk about something that the Kings did tonight that they have been struggling to do all season long, and it directly correlated to tonight's comfortable victory in Los Angeles. I'll get to that and more here in just a second. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by PrizePicks. What is PrizePicks? It's America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members, myself, of course, included. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings and money roll in when you use that basketball knowledge and you get it right. So what does that mean? Let me make it understandable for you. So tonight, for example, there would have been different like stat projections for Sabonis, for Fox, for Kawhi, for Harrison Barnes, for different players. You could pick points, rebounds, steals, blocks, dunks, a combination of points, rebounds, and assists, turnovers, three-pointers made, right? There's so many different ways to play. You pick more or less on De'Aaron Fox, 26.5 points, right? You do that for up to 6 players. You can win up to 25 times your entry. And one of the coolest things that PrizePicks does, right? If you pick somebody, but they get hurt or something happens in the first half, it becomes a push. It becomes a wash, right? They're not going to penalize you. PrizePicks is not going to penalize you for a player getting hurt or unforeseen circumstances happening. That's no fun. Nobody wants to feel good about that. That at this point just feels like you've been robbed, right? So PrizePicks takes that out of it. They do not punish you for anything like that. Plus, when you win, and I say win because PrizePicks presents so many unbelievable opportunities, they will give you wins. For example, on Christmas Day, they gave us if you pick more on Kevin Durant scoring a single point, there's one of your 6 PrizePicks entries right there that's already a guarantee. PrizePicks does that all the time. When you win, you get your money withdrawn to your account quickly. It's happened for me in less than 2 days. That's how quick that it works. PrizePicks is so much fun. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for our first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's $100 that you can get matched immediately when you first sign up with that first deposit that you make. PrizePicks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. How many times this season have you heard me say 3-point defense killed the Sacramento Kings? How many times have I said it, right? Seemingly every Kings game, I say it. Well, tonight, guess what the Sacramento Kings did? The Kings held the Los Angeles Clippers to 8 of 27, 29% from three-point range. Now, Matt, how much of that is the Kings and their great defense, and how much of that is the Clippers just missed shots? I don't know. But I'm going to give the Sacramento Kings credit for doing something that they've rarely done this season. Teams are shooting an average of 40% or better from three-point range on them nightly. So for it to drop down to 29%, yeah, no wonder the Kings beat the Clippers on the road by double digits. That is a huge improvement in tonight's game, and it just goes to show you that Sacramento is capable of having those perimeter defensive nights to get those stops on the perimeter when they need to win big games. Now, they still have to prove that they can do it consistently, right? And that's step 2. But step 1 is showing that you can have a night like this where you do as good of a job as you can to, at the very least, make these shots contested, right? Make the job difficult for shooters. If they still hit shots, tip your cap and move on, right? And tonight, the Clippers did hit a couple of threes where you're like, what are the Kings supposed to do? Right? The great defense, they just hit big shots. So that's going to happen. And it feels like it happens more against the Sacramento Kings than any other team. But overall tonight, the Kings' three-point defense was really, really good. I also want to point out, too, in recent seasons, and I feel like a lot last season, we talked about rebounding. God, the Kings are getting killed on the glass. God, the Kings are getting out-rebounded. Oh, man, offensive rebounds. Remember how much offensive rebounds killed the Kings in the playoffs? Right? The offensive glass was just brutal to Sacramento last season. I feel like we've barely talked about it this year. That's because more often than not, the Kings are winning the rebound battle this season. Now, a lot of that has to do with soon-to-be back-to-back rebound champion, Domantas Sabonis, of course. But the Kings, I think, as a whole, as a unit, are doing a better job rebounding and specifically blocking out, or rather boxing out. Tonight, they out-rebounded the Clippers 41-39. They also had like a 4 or 5 offensive rebound advantage, which is a very, very good thing. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about tonight. We've had a lot of fun, right? I'm fired up. I'm talking about how big this win is, not understating it. None of this matters if you don't build on it, right? You got that start. This is that. I broke this race down into 3 parts. This is the survive part, right? You have to survive this 4-game stretch where you took on the Clippers. Then you have the Heat tomorrow night, second night of a back-to-back. And then you have the Denver Nuggets for the 4th and final time. And you have the Minnesota Timberwolves, right? A 4-game stretch where I said the goal is just to go 2-2. You got this off to a tremendous start with arguably the toughest win out of the 4, the Clippers at home. Good job. None of it matters. You set this tone. You came dialed in, focused, locked in, ready to go. You established it early on, and you forced the Clippers to catch up to you. Awesome job. Can you do that again? Can you do that consistently? I know tomorrow night is the second night of a back-to-back, and I promise you the Kings exerted a ton of energy. The physicality that they played with in this game, there are going to be some bumps and bruises tomorrow morning for this Kings team. But can you overcome it? You're facing a Miami Heat team that is going to be without Jimmy Butler. I know we all roll our eyes and go, oh, God, the Kings are playing a team without their star. They're destined to lose. It's time to put those fears away, right? This is playoff race time. None of that crap matters. Fresh start. Your history doesn't matter. You're at home against a shorthanded Miami Heat team, a team that is not as good as they were last year, a team that you should have beaten or could have beaten in Miami, and you got beat down. Straightforward. Establish yourself, set the tone against Miami the same way you did tonight against the Clippers. Overcome that pain, overcome that fatigue. Do it. If the goal for this 4-game stretch is to go 2-2, accomplish that goal immediately. Win those first 2 games on the second night of a back-to-back, and then you can go in and play a little bit free against the Denver Nuggets and the Minnesota Timberwolves before that strike stretch where there's a lot of winnable games and a lot of important games for Sacramento coming up in a homestand a week away from now, or a couple weeks down the line, right? Go and establish yourself. Win this game tomorrow night against Miami. Do it for the fans inside the Golden One Center. That is what I want to see. But again, I feel like I want to say when the Kings make the playoffs, when the Kings establish themselves as a top 6 seed, and we're looking back on this playoff race and we're going, what happened? Like, what did the Kings do? I feel like we're pointing to this game and we're going, that is the night that it started. Very similar way to how I point to the Kings' 175-174 double overtime victory against the Clippers in LA around this time last year. And I said that was the night where the Kings cemented themselves as a playoff team. I feel like this kind of win is what shows the Kings they are a playoff team in the West. I know it's a tough race. I know there's a lot of competition out there, but you don't have to beat them. They have to beat you. That is the mindset that I saw from the Kings tonight, and that's what I want to see throughout the remainder of the regular season. All right, now I want to hear your thoughts. I know you got plenty to share. You're probably already getting loose in the comment section down below. Have at it. Of course, you can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. I appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kings from the Golden One Center after hopefully another Kings victory. But win or loss, I'll be there for you, so I hope to see you there. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.